We've got a whole bunch of video cameras. Let's take some of them apart. Here is a video camera. Panasonic DP800 wasn't shown in that previous row because it was already on the bench. This is in very bad shape. It's been abused. It's 3CCD SVHS recording, and when I got it, the viewfinder mount was completely ripped off. Got these very bent screws that I pulled out, and I've repaired that. No idea if this works, I haven't turned it on yet. This mount was completely broken off, but in addition to that, the lens mount is damaged. That's very loose, and the filter changer doesn't work at all, so there's something upset there. I just put it back together to take some photos. But the position locking pin for the lens has sheared off, so it's had some fairly hard knock, and so all that's loose. And you can see it's partway through, or partway between filters in there. There's no easy way to get to that. We have to take it apart to have a look. Came with a tripod mount, which is good, I guess, stops it from tipping over. I think we should power this up first and see what it does. I have not tried turning it on. Let's put this on, and we'll try and attach the lens and see if we can get something. Haven't got a video monitor set up, but we'll see if the viewfinder brings us anything. So it's got video out and Genlock input, and then there's the timing settings there for the Genlock. Then, so that was camera, and then VTRs, S video out, normal composite video out, 2 channels of audio, external power, and then on the back VTR, 2 audio inputs, earphones, and then a battery mount up there, and a switch there that does something. It says automatic light control. Not really sure what that's about. Anyway, let's stick some power on this and see what happens. I've got a 12 volt source here, and there's probably a power switch somewhere here on the side where it normally is. So it's on off. Save. Look at that, it came up. On. Power zoom operates. Auto iris there. So the lens is functioning. Let's see if there's anything in the viewfinder. Ah, look at that. Looks like it is working. Oops. Yeah, except for the lens mount being completely wrecked. So there is a picture in there, and it more or less makes sense. There is my hand. Perhaps we should get a monitor out so we can actually check this properly. What a crazy idea that would be. Got a monitor. Let's plug that in to this video out. Oh, look at that, we've got a picture. Fairly reasonable picture there. Let's check on the VTR output. Except the BNC connector's squashed on that. We're going to have to do a little bit of adjustment to it and bring that back to life. Oh, it's really loose. It's probably been whacked pretty hard, if that helps. Oh, yep. Okay, well let's put a tape in here and see if it does anything. So we don't want to record. Oh, Ah, look at that, it's bent. The tape thing is bent a bit. A bit flimsy. Okay. It sort of works, but yeah. Yeah, there might be slipping bolts or something like that in there. I think it's chewed up the tape. Okay, well, let's take this thing apart. We've confirmed it sort of works, and now it just makes a noise. Generates bars. Ah, look at that, there's a whole menu there. Diagnostics, error log, slack reel. Okay, yeah, because there's something not happening. Memory int, we don't really want that. You can't use up and down, you just gotta cycle through everything. Battery, NiCad 12 volts. Camera settings, that's neat that it's all configurable like that. What the gain can be set by these switches. 26 pin control, IP remote, time code, on audio. Okay, quite a bit of audio things can be configured. So that will be, oh yeah, that's coming up on the viewfinder as well. There, the sync of that is, okay, well, that's interesting. Let's take this thing apart. Yeah, we'll get the viewfinder off, and we'll take the lens off, and then we'll, yeah, start taking it apart. See if we can see what's broken inside the lens mount there. I don't know if we'll need a different camera angle to be able to see this better. We'll start by taking the handle off the top. This camera here seems like a cheaper version of another one that I've got. So it's SVHS. But the shape of it seems quite similar to this one, which is WV-F500, which is can go into studio configuration or different types of recorders on the back. Which this one has mounted an M2 recorder. It looks like it's been to the 98 Commonwealth Games, is it? Yeah, with all venue access. So it seems to be a similar era to this. The design is quite similar. The transport controls are very similar there. Similar sort of viewfinder mounting thing. Although the connection to this one is a separate wire. And this is an LED up on this handle. Must be another tally light. And the microphone's also part of the handle. So there's some wire. The low performance microphone on this. There's another screw. Very corroded screw. And it's got that crusty foam stuff falling off of it still. Yeah, look at that, another little plug in there. And that might be quite hard to get back if you want to feed that back in. Making a nice mess already, so that's good. So you have to take the door off. GIS1. Good, that can come off. Now there's some flat screws there. Almost like thumb screws and will be retained in the housing. Ah, look at that. The grounding thing is bent off. So that's been well abused. There's also something rattling inside there. And so the tape's not that slack, but for some reason it was unhappy with it. Let's continue removing bits and pieces. I suppose this is all upside down. Should we have it around this way to make more sense? Shielding material there. Which reveals another shield. So all the CCD business is inside here. Quite a loose screw there. Not sure if there's any benefit opening this up. Just see the back side of the connectors. Yeah, there's a board in the... So, that's interesting. Someone's done something in here. So the red and black wire that comes off of this VTR connector is not connected anymore. That there, so it would have gone into that little header there. So this means they're preventing it from being powered from the VTR. Wonder if that's to do with some configuration that it was used in by whoever owned this. Maybe they had it on a recorder that wasn't able to provide enough power for this machine to run, so they always used it on its own batteries. Okay, we can see down, pretty empty void down there, but there's some wires with a ferrite core coming out. Maybe that's the video signal coming out of the camera section. I should put this back, turn this over and see if we can... Oh, there's a monitor volume. See what happens if we open it from this side. I suppose I could have got a service manual which would explain how to take it apart, but where's the fun in that? That's cheating. Scene file. I wonder if there's some kind of memory thing. This looks like it takes off the entire side. Maybe you're not supposed to take this off for general servicing. There's a circuit breaker reset button on the bottom there. Oh, look at that. Oh, wow. I guess you are supposed to take this off for servicing. Look at all that stuff as part of this panel, and it is just one connector to remove it. That's very convenient. Even all these switches. So those must not be the actual controlling, like that power switch there with its thin little wires probably isn't actually switching the power. It's just control signals. Yeah, that's quite a nice assembly there. Oh dear. It's actually cracked the housing there. That aluminium type frame is completely snapped there. That's why the lens mount rattles around. It's because the lens mount is completely broken off. Wondering if there's a way we can take the bottom off of this thing. Take this part off so we can stand it up on its end and then get a look down the front there. Probably doesn't want to come off easily. Too much stuff going to it. Perhaps we should follow the Panasonic conventions. So in Panasonic equipment you always undo the red screws if you want to service it, because that will release purposely designed easy servicing methods. So this would probably all hinge up once you undo the... Maybe you have to do all of them. Let's see, yeah, look at that. This is the back of the mechanical section. So this ribbon goes into the camera part. There's a lot of little surface mount caps there. Wonder how many of them have gone bad. Got a little bit of a smell. Not as bad as some of them where all the capacitors have let rip. Okay, it looks like we can take the camera section off. So let's do that by these screws at the front. That's not even an original screw. It would have been black. And these screws up here. That. So we need to try and disconnect this from the rest of the machine. Some red screws there, so they must intend for you to take this piece out to separate the camera. That's auto white balance and another start stop switch. And the lens connector. This doesn't want to lift up anymore. What have we done to it? That connector there. Here's a ground strap. And you've got a ribbon there. Then it's just two more connectors. Which are there and there. And now the camera section is removed. So let's take a look at the camera. Okay, here's the camera part. Something fell out. So that must be part of the mount. That's a shame, isn't it? It's broken there. So let's see what we can do. Remove the shielding. CCD pulse for the CCD. More good stuff. Red screws, we can open these. And it's part of this assembly with two more red screws. That one was hardly tight. And so was that. Oh, look at that. There's the CCD assembly. Perhaps we can disconnect these ribbons. So So that's all the business involved with driving the CCDs. A lot of capacitors are involved. And there are 3 CCDs. There'll be one on the top there, on the other side of that. And then there's 2 on the sides. And this is springing upwards. So that must be a signal wire coming back to tell you what filter is enabled in front of the sensors. So that's the pickup wires off the CCDs. So the whole lens mount is broken off. There's more pieces there. It looks a bit terminal, doesn't it? So there's a tiny little screw to remove that. And then there'll be these 4 screws. And then I think this assembly will lift out. Two grip screws. Okay, well that must have some calibration because you got to know which one's which when you... Anyway, put it back. I think the whole front is bent in as well. And those bottom ones didn't actually undo anything, so you just take off this already snapped off piece of stuff and that already snapped off piece of stuff. So that the little lever thing needs to come out. Nope. Okay, so that's probably fine other than being a little bit bent. But this, unfortunately, is snapped in half. I wonder if this camera got dropped or it fell off of a stand or off of a table and the lens took the force and so it's smashed off this lens mount. So it's only held on by this tin cover. That's the only thing holding this whole piece together because it's screwed down there on the other side of the crack. And there's a little tiny bit of silicone glue there. Aha, look at that. So that the filters are normally driven by a gear that's down in there. You can see the teeth from this, which has a little encoder type thing. Let's take the rest of this cover off so we can see it. Oh, it falls apart again. So it snapped the corner off of that circuit board as well. And so it's really smashed up. So there's the detents for those little, what do you call those, dents in the wheel. So there must be a calibration. You have to line up something. So there's different arrows. And there's an arrow on that. So there must be one of the positions lines up with it. Doesn't look like it. Oh, I guess that doesn't matter because that's just a knob. But it depends then which way you put this on it to know which filter you're in. 1, 2, 3. Is there only 3 on this? There's an open and then there's 2 different shades. Don't think we can take the CCDs off without destroying it. And I don't think we can take anything else off because the screws are covered by the CCD, which appears to be glued in place. CCD board. So there's probably a little op-amp thing there to amplify the output. Looks like it comes from there maybe. Well, that one does. It goes through a little green looking resistor into the signal output. So there'll be a prism in there with coatings on it that let through different wavelengths of light. You can see the CCD surface in there. And the IR filter on top, which is reflecting that blue color. So I wonder how much more than this you need to have a camera, a working standalone camera. It probably requires that other board that the ribbon cable connects in there, quite a complicated board. I wonder if this could be made into a standalone camera. Because the lens mount itself is fine. It's the way that joins into the rest of the housing that is completely broken off. All 4 screws are gone. They're all on these pieces that are snapped off. But it looked like the camera worked. Camera is tidied up. So I assume this board here is also camera related. That would be almost completely camera involved. It looks like it because these other two wires coming off there go to the camera video I/O, and there isn't really anything else coming off of it, although it does connect into these two boards. So I guess it's not that easy to separate the camera out. Oh, and it goes onto this board. Okay, so everything's fully integrated. It also looks like this is ready to completely come apart with just one more screw being removed, which is this one here. Now it comes apart, whether it likes it or not, except the whole board frame is coming with it, with the base, so we'll have to separate those hinges out. I was also thinking this red and black wire here looks like it goes to the battery mount, which is probably like a kind of aftermarket thing that you attach depending on what type of batteries you want to use. Let's take that off and have a look at it. Might be a Phillips. Usually on these types of video cameras you mount what type of battery system you want on there with an aftermarket battery receiver, whatever you call this, battery mount. Ah, look at that. It's a spare fuse. Weird, so there's some kind of fuse holder thing there. So this can come off. So I wonder what that signal is. The signal is Anton. That's because this is Anton Bauer battery mount. Automatic light control. I wonder what that does. What light? Yeah, so there's some business there. Not exactly sure what that does. I wonder if that's a low voltage cutout, maybe. Although the power doesn't go through it. So it's something that goes on this purple wire and is related to this switch. But there's this other connector here. It says output 10 amps max. So that must be... Oh, they must mean light control, meaning you can plug a video light into here and have that mounted on the top of your camera to point at the talent. So automatic light control probably means if your battery's going flat, it will shut your light off to save power. Probably what that's all about. So I've seen that before on other cameras, so I think it must be a standard thing that the different manufacturers' battery mounts can connect onto. Found this service manual, and it will tell us some things. So some service aids. So you can get extension cables which go between the boards, so you can unfold the boards while you're doing stuff. Process, video, audio and system control. There's some operating instructions. I want to see is a block diagram, disassembly flowchart. Probably already violated that. It shows you where the various connectors are. Removal of the camera unit. I think we've already done that. Removal of the cassette compartment unit. Taking apart the viewfinder. All the different screws that are involved. Dimensions, schematics. Let's see if we can find a block diagram. CCD is the LCD front thing. Video, audio system, process CBA. I think that's what they call this PCB. Circuit board assembly, I guess. I want to see what's on the process. The scan is a little bit underwhelming. So there's the viewfinder, and it's got a connector. I guess also the resolution of this is not good enough to be able to read it. Awesome. Video, audio, the CCD drive boards. After that, the process board, the VTR connector on the back, and it goes straight into schematics that are all chopped between pages, so they're incredibly difficult to follow. I don't think this is going to give us much benefit right now. Anyway, perhaps what we'll do is leave this dismantled for a few years and then do a reassembly from memory video to see how that goes. That's always a fun challenge. It's good when you receive something that somebody else has dismantled, just a big box full of bits, and then you get to work out how to put it back together. The viewfinder connector. It can rotate, which is interesting. It seems the viewfinder could tilt up and down by some degree and then get locked by these teeth. Just want to disconnect this back panel thing. It's fully falling apart right now. I do not want to unplug. Okay, battery mounts disconnect. The cord is wrapped around this, and then viewfinder connector. These ones aren't labeled. Sometimes they print the connector number on the connectors, which is really helpful. What is that? There's a memory backup battery down there. Perhaps we'll just leave that. Disconnect that. And then there's another grounding strap. It has to be done from the other end, because the screw head is slightly blocked. Now, audio head and video head ribbon cables disconnect. Some corrosion in there, that's not a good sign. Now we disconnect these other cables. There's a lot of ribbon cables. Now, will this come out? Whoa, look at that. Tape assembly has come out. Did that get ripped off, or did I unplug that? Don't know. Doesn't seem to be any plug for that. I wonder what that was. That's weird. Is that something that just sits there and doesn't go anywhere? Comes from the bottom. I don't know, was that just tucked in there, not joined onto anything? Some kind of add-on thing. This is very weird. There's this cable which supposedly went to nowhere. Appears to go to that, which looks like it's just glued in. Let's take all this off and investigate it. I don't think these need to come off. This is just the tripod mount. Does that take that off? Nope. I think it's just one molded assembly. This will take out this back panel. You can see what's going on. So there's some extra board. Should we take this out and have a look at it? Might as well. So that disconnects. Huh. So they must have found that these wires are too thin, and they've done a bodge with this, which is in parallel. That's interesting. There must have been too much voltage drop. So there's a factory fitted update of a little cable assembly with an inline connector in parallel with that. Nope. That's all that can feed through. Yeah, there's a wire that goes all the way up to the microphone. So just pull that off. Like, they only fit one way because I've used their small 3-way, 2, 4, bigger 3-way, small 4-way, so you can only fit the connectors in one position. Here is some kind of add-on, an in and out connector there, which makes me wonder, is it an option to connect this in line with another cable assembly? That's a different pit. There must be another, probably this, going up to here. Makes me wonder if what you can do is pull this out, plug that into its place, and then route this back down and plug it into here, and it provides some sort of buffering to the video signal. Buffering, amplification, or conversion, because there's 3 pots on there, 3 capacitors, so it's definitely something to do with RGB or component. Label it, see, there's something there, comp, there's component out. Maybe it's if you want component out instead of RGB out of this, presumably. Where does that normally go? Oh, it normally goes So it's not RGB or component, it's the S-video and composite connections. I wonder, can that do something like that? Is it possible they could make it that becomes the Y and that becomes the PRPB to make it a component output? It's possible, but you'd need to tell it some way that that's what's happening, because there's no extra cores in this for control signals. What a bizarre thing. Really interesting. It's got bodges on it. It's also got a bunch of these weird looking things, which I think those are surface mount film capacitors. Very interesting, that. I wonder if that is in the service manual and we could look that up. There's more writing on this that you can't quite read because it's covered by the wires. So I'm pretty sure this is talking about component video. Need to get something to poke it so that the wires are out of the way. Try and poke this thing without destroying it. I want to lift that up because there's writing beyond those. So it's talking about what the pots do. So you can see that says Y refers to this one, and then under there, hard to read, but it says PB is this one and PR is that one. So it is for a component output, but I'm not sure where the output is. Maybe there's a variant of this connector which can wire onto there to get component output. It's possible they sold this with a different configuration that had another cable that went up to here, and then you plug that into there, which the pinout matches, but then you have to do something on here to enable component output. There's already some other bodges on there. Look at that, there's more boards stuck onto the side there. Liberate this assembly from the base. Not that we need to, but I suppose what we can try doing is turning this thing on when it's all disassembled like this and poking around with the mechanism to see if we can get that sorted out. I'll just join some of this stuff back together so that it can be tracked. Not going to be that easy though, is it? Because this ribbon cable goes there. This extra add-on thing. That cable goes onto here. What was that? A massive connector there. I think that was that front panel, or side panel thing, I think goes onto that. That went up to the mechanism. So there's a multi-layer, so there's 3? No, there's just a shield between them. Let's take this off anyway so we can have a look what's going on under this thing. I was hoping it would be a bit more modular than this, that you could have the camera part separated from the VCR part, since it was implied by having separate camera output connectors. But far out, look at all that stuff. That's a lot of stuff. Look at those bodges on there. Yes, it's pretty severe amount of stuff going on. We'll just put that back so they stay together as one unit, and then we'll start poking around in the mechanical section. And I saw there were a couple of belts there, so I'm guessing that's what the problem is with it getting itself chewed up. So I'll just bunch that together and put it to one side. Okay, let's look at this mechanical section, see what it has to say for itself. So we've got the tape stuck in it, and it's all in the threaded up position. So we need to see if there's a loading motor, probably this, that we can turn to put it back into the eject position. So we can get the tape out of it. What that's all about. Not sure. I'm guessing it opens this way. Oh yeah, it looks like it does. So you have to unhook this cable from there. And this side, you have to cut a cable tie. Then it should just lift up. Not exactly. Okay, so I have to unplug the right protect switch and that thing. It sort of does. Okay, we're gonna have to unplug this stuff at the side. Doesn't quite go long enough. That one and that one. Then we can fold that out. Now, can we run the mechanism? and get super greasy fingers at the same time. So the belt has got grease on it, the pulley has got grease on it. Let's now turn the mechanism manually and see what we can get it to do. Is that unthreading? There we go. So we're going to turn this in the wind direction. There we go. Look at that, we didn't destroy the tape. That's good. Now what releases it? Over there, there's a little hook. Let's just pull this board completely off because it's getting in the way. Is that a good idea? Just don't want to wreck the ribbon cables. But then if we take them off, will we be able to work out where they go? Probably. That one's got a double ribbon cable on it. Looks very delicate there with that extra ribbon cable thing. Loading mode. Ah, look at that, it tells you emergency eject, turn that way. Okay, to go through the unload cycle. So presumably the problem it had was these belts are slipping. But they feel quite good, so I'm not sure about that. Although that one there, it's still good. Belt does not slip easily, so I'm not sure about that. Maybe there's some other issue then. I need to wash this off. Okay, we'll have a quick look at this mechanism. Oh yeah, there's a bit of tape there covering a peg, which is need to protect that ribbon. So the head is pretty well integrated with the motor. Like right up in there. The old ones, the motor was external on the bottom, but yeah, this is all internal. The head seems okay, maybe not quite. Yeah, there's a common problem with the Panasonic ones because they used oil thrust things instead of bearings, ball bearings, and the oil dries out, or grease, and then the head starts rattling. This it's probably got that problems. I can feel it wobbling very slightly there. There's a loading motor and this cam thing with tracks in it that this follows and does various operations. Capstan motor there, brushless motor, and then that's belt driven, which is a bit bizarre because a lot of things use tooth belts now, not just a rubber belt. To stop the slipping. These mechanisms, and there's sliding stuff down there, which there's a slide switch there, which is the mode switch, so that it can tell what mode the mechanism is in. And that sliding part will be for applying brakes and changing the state of things. And should we eject it again? There's various braking arms and things on there, under there. There's this idler which can swing back and forth to drive either the take-up or the supply reels, and that's done with cogs in this case rather than a tire type thing which grips because those slip. It's got a back tension band around the supply reel which goes up to controlled by this little arm here once it's in the loaded position to control the rate that the tape can be released off the feed spool. There's the erase head there, the audio and control head, and the video head, capstan, a pinch roller which will swing out when it's in the fully loaded position. These loading rollers which will come out to bring the tape around the head, and some guides there. And then there's a braking mechanism to provide the soft eject. And there's 4 red screws down there which you'd be able to remove to take out the tape loading assembly to work on the mechanism. So it's all pretty optimized these days. The older ones are very complicated. We'll take a look at those one day. Let's take a look at the lens. Standardized lens, possibly a standardized connector, at least between same manufacturers. There's a zoom control and auto manual iris. The iris there, the zoom. The zoom can be put into manual so that you can do it by hand, or S, which means done by the motor inside here. Focus is manual, but there's some screw holes there and there's teeth along it, so you can have a cable remote focusing device. And there's also these connectors here, so you can connect up to something like this, a zoom demand, which would mount when you're in the studio configuration. You connect that onto the lens, and that allows you to mount this onto the handle of your pedestal that the camera's mounted on, and then you get a zoom control there and record, and probably that's the return feed, I think, for seeing what's coming back from the control room in your viewfinder. Same as pushing that. Start, stop, record. This part is attached to the lens. It can be removed with 4 screws. These screws are very well used. I think someone's tried to glue that one. It's probably got damaged the same way as everything else in this has got damaged. There's 3 screws. The screw is bent. So when that comes off, you can now see there's a gear that does the iris, and then there's one that selectively does the zoom. So when you move that control wheel, it moves the gear off to the side, so it's no longer contacting on the lens. So it's now just a fully manual lens. There's a macro adjustment, and there's also a back focus adjustment that you can make, and that has a calibration position. There's the aperture control, f1.4 to 16, and zoom, this one's a 7.5 to 105. Focus. Okay, that's the lens. I don't think we need to take that apart any further. It's lost its lens hood. It probably got smashed. See, it's a bit bashed in the side there, so you won't be able to get a filter onto this anymore, or any other thing that's screwed in. So the locating pin for the lens mount is sheared off, which is here. I still have it because it was stuck in the lens mount. That's actually a hollow thing. It's not a solid pin. It has a cross thread on it, or a slot on it. So that, yeah, you can probably unscrew the remains of that and put in a new one if you had one. So that's used to align it in the lens mount. Not very good for my tweezers or my cutters. Yeah, lens, pretty good lens. So let's take that apart. Screws are all loose. Oh, look at all that stuff. So that control's fallen off. Oh, that will come off the top. So it's just a slide switch. I haven't checked that. I presume that's a proportional control. Maybe it's proportional in one direction because the wide. Oh no, it's just something was in the way of it. The wide direction doesn't have that little retention clip thing there. Oh, so there's a pot dual gang variable resistor there on the iris, so it must know which position it's in. So if you're going to put the lens back onto this, then you'd have to get this in the right position, otherwise it's not going to work. That would stop you from turning it. Okay, so the zoom control is a self-contained unit, and there's some adjustments there. That might be to do with auto iris, maybe. There's geared motors. We need to take those out? Probably. The motor's kind of inside a thing, but there's the motor with a pot attached to it for the iris. I'll put that back. Not sure how much I want to irreversibly destroy this thing. Maybe just a little bit. Because, yeah, well, the lens mount is destroyed, so without some serious gluing, that's never going to work again. And we didn't find anything actually wrong with the mechanism. The belts weren't slipping like suspected, so I might have to do a part 2 where we power it all up and investigate it while it's running. And okay, so that's a lens drive and a lens. Pretty interesting. Put that aside, and the final part we're going to take a look inside is the viewfinder. So the eye cup part is slid off, which has the adjustment to depending on your eye type and for the perceived distance, so that you can make looking through there effectively the same distance as the subject that you're filming, so that your eyes aren't constantly changing focus as you go between the viewfinder and the live. So this was really destroyed. This had all bent screws in it, like the other. No, it was the camera part. It was all bent, sheared off screws. This part got away okay, I think. This is the connector. Now that can go in and out and turn, and then that locks it down, supposedly. Now one of these, yeah, that one is completely snapped off. Because I did already investigate this to see what sort of business was going on inside it, and it's quite packed with stuff. I think it has all the character generator stuff in it as well. What else do we have to take off? Oh, it goes off that side. Interesting, there's a cable going across there. Now the CRT is restrained by this cable that goes over the top, which is interesting. Now that comes out. There's quite a few boards in this. So we've got the flyback transformer and various other bits, and deflection drive. There's the two there. The video signal comes in and then goes to various things. There's a little linking board there with more parts on it, and I'm pretty sure that's the chip down there which does the sync separation and sends various pulse signals around to drive the other bits and pieces, like the transformer. I might have a schematic. No schematic. Well, it was in the service manual, but it's spread across multiple pages. So that comes off down to there. This ring part needs to open up. Now there's some little screws here, and then there's some large screws here. I'm not sure if those have to come off. Okay, now we can see the tube. Okay, so those small screws there are retaining the tube assembly. You can see in there. Can you see in there? Maybe. That has been melted because at some point this would have been pointing in the direction of the sun, and the lens there focuses the light and starts burning. This one got off pretty lightly. Other viewfinders I've seen have got all melted bits all around them, and even up onto here, if it's plastic, all melted from it being pointed near the sun. So here's the CRT. So it's got the anode connection. So I think these are 1.5 inch-ish. I've got a data sheet for the common type of tubes that are seen in these cameras. Let's see if I can find that. This might be, it'll be similar to this. Although it's the same brand. This is a Matsushita one as well. This is a 40CB4. So that's a 1.5 inch picture tube with electrostatic focus. I think it's 5 kV anode voltage. There's a pin out there. Yeah, 5 kV there. some nice hand-drawn graphs, and then there's a drawing of the tube. A special miniature 7-pin connector. So that's pretty neat. There's the deflection coils, socket. This might still have some charge in it, in the tube, since we did run it earlier. Because it acts like a capacitor. You got the ground on the outside, and then on the inside of the glass there's another conductive coating connecting to the anode. So that creates a ideal capacitor with a glass dielectric. So there's a bunch of LEDs around there to show various statuses. That's what all those wires there are going to. Various LEDs. So that part on the front's a PCB. So there's the front of the tube, and there's a little PCB with LEDs on it. It's quite neat to have such a small square front tube, or rectangular tube, because a lot of the, well, all the smaller ones in consumer cameras are a little round tube, and they also have the anode connection on the base, but I think the voltage is too high on these, so they have to do it on the side like a regular TV sized CRT, and so that's pretty interesting. So I think we're done there. We've investigated all the bits and pieces in that camera. I might have a go at getting it to work, and if I do, that will make us another video. So I hope that was good.